In this lesson, we are going to solve for variables in formulas and literal equations. Literal equations. It's going to be easier if I just show you what we're doing. We're basically giving these formulas, literal equations, we're just taking them and we're going to find out what A is or what B is or what C is or what D is or E or whatever. So we do it the same exact way. It's just we can't do some of the math. So in this problem, we started off with A, we added B, and we got, before I even do that, actually let me back up. Look down here first to figure out what we're looking for. So A equals. So we're going to start off with A. So A, and then we added B, and then we got to C. So in order to undo it, we're going to subtract B from both sides. And we get A equals. Now, we really can't do C minus B because we don't know what C is, we don't know what B is. It's not like C minus C or C minus 2C or anything like that. We can't do it. So we just leave it like that. A equals C minus B. And that is our solution. A equals C minus B. In this problem, we're also looking for A. So we start with A, we multiplied by B, and we added C, and we got to the letter D. So inverse operations, going backwards, let's subtract C. So we are left with AB equals, remember we can't do the math here, so to speak, so we just write D minus C. Now, in order to undo times B, we divide by B. Now, we don't want to divide D by B because that doesn't work. We don't want to divide C by B, and we don't want to just put divide by B at the end here. Because of order of operations, you would do division before subtraction. What you want to do is show that you would do D minus C and then B, divide by B. Okay, so A equals D minus C and then divide by B. Make that be a little nicer. Okay. The more we do, the more it'll make sense. So A equals, so we start off with A again, and then we divide by B, and then we add C, and once again we end up with the letter D. So instead of adding C, we will subtract C. Oh, looks very familiar. A over B times D minus C. Now to get rid of this divide by B, I'm going to multiply by B. Now, when I show it, I can't just write it like this. I can't just put D minus C times B, because remember, this would be order of operations. One way of showing it is with parentheses, because I would do D minus C, and then I would multiply by B. So A equals D minus C times B. One last thing is that people don't like to really leave it this way, because it kind of, I don't know, it all looks weird, at some level. But they like to write it, remember, they like to write this differently. Remember, multiplication, you can do this times this or this times this. So most of the time they put the B in front after that step and do D minus C. But for our purposes, both this answer and this answer are going to be adequate. I just prefer this one, and eventually you will just start seeing me do this one on your notes. So it's better to get practice doing that. All right, so now I'm not going to look for A. So we have X, M, and F. Let me just write that up here. X, M, F. Okay. So I started with X, then I multiplied by 4, I divided it by Y, And then I got to W. It doesn't matter that it doesn't equal W on this side. Remember, we start with whatever letter it asks. It asks for X. So we start with that variable X, and we see what happens to get this answer or that answer. So instead of divide by Y, we multiply by Y. So I'm going to put WY equals X times 4. Remember, we're finding out what X is, so divide by 4. I guess I'll just continue that. And then you end up with WY over 4 equals X. But this isn't the way conventionally that it's written. If we want to know what X is, let's put the X first. So X equals, I'm going to write that a little bit more like, okay, X equals WY over 4. Okay, so in this next one, we're solving for M. And then we multiply by N, we multiply by O, and then we divide by Q, and we get to P. So one way you could do this is you could just move this around and put equals P over here if you want, if you prefer. I'm just trying to show you both. I mean, both ways are fine. So let's start. So instead of divide by Q, we can multiply by Q. So PQ or QP, doesn't really matter. I guess usually they put in alphabetical order, so P and then Q. That's how I'm going to do it. So alphabetical order, actually. It does matter a little bit. Not mathematically, really, but in how your teachers will usually show you. So PQ equals M and O. Now we're going to, this is multiplied by O, so we need to divide by O. So PQ divided by O equals M N. Remember, we're hanging on to the M. So divide by N. I'll just continue like that. Oh, this is going to be weird. So I'm going to bring this over here. Actually, I'll just bring it down to make it easier for some of y'all. So if we have P and then we have Q, and we divide it by O, and then divide it by N. That is actually the same as taking P times Q, and then dividing it by O times N. I'll explain that in a moment. And then I'm just going to flip it around, M equals PQ over O N. Let me explain this last piece for a second. Let's say you have like 20, and you divide by 5, and you divide by 2. That is the same as taking 20, I'll just put equals, it's the same as 20 divided by 10. It's 20 divided by 5 divided by 2 is the same as 20 divided by 5 times 2. So we kind of use that thinking. So instead of dividing by O and dividing by N, don't leave it like this. This is horrible looking. You don't want to leave it like this. And when you divide by O, divide by N, just divide by O times N. Okay, we will, I think this next one, I think it shows a similar thing. So before we actually continue, I accidentally put a G in 2 spots. So I'm going to change this G. Well, actually, I can do this. I'm going to take black and change this G going to change that to a J. All right, so we are solving for F in this one. So we had F, which is right here. We multiplied by G, multiplied by H to the third. Then we divided it by the letter D, and we added E, We got to the letter J. Remember, we changed that to J. So, remember, we inverse operations going backwards. So instead of adding E, we subtract E. So we get J minus E equals F G H to the third over D. So we got rid of that plus E. And instead of divide by D, we're going to multiply by D. Remember that we can't just leave it like that because it looks like just D times J. We want J minus E multiplied by D. So D times J minus E equals F G H to the third. So instead of times h to the third, or h cubed, we divide by h cubed. That becomes 1. So D times J minus E. Oops, I don't know why I did that. Minus E over h to the third equals F G. So instead of times G, I'm going to divide by G. Remember, let me write it like this. Remember, we're not going to write it like that. We're going to leave it like that because that looks terrible. So I'm going to bring this F to this side since we're kind of, running out a little bit of space. So F equals D times J minus E. Remember, we're not going to divide it by h cubed and then G. We're going to divide it by h cubed G. I guess conventionally you put the G before the H because, G comes before H and it's multiplication. But we'll just leave it like that. And that is our answer. Thank you.